Good evening. I'm Gwen Ifill of the PBS NewsHour and Washington Week. 72%. That's the percentage of U.S. high school students who actually manage to graduate. The rest drop out. What happens year after year to the rest of them? What are we as a country losing by losing them? And what can we do about it? We're here tonight to talk about the costs of losing high school graduates and the benefits of helping them find their way to a diploma. St. Louis is one of many communities across the country that has joined a significant national initiative to keep these students in school. Welcome to American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen, a multi-year commitment being undertaken by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We're bringing together the people, the organizations, and the resources to improve graduation rates. Success won't happen right away, but in St. Louis, it starts tonight. Who better to start this conversation than the people on the front lines, our teachers. Tonight on the 9 Network, a teacher town hall meeting.
American Graduate Teacher Town Halls are funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and are part of American Graduate Let's Make It Happen, a public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
I don't like the term dropout because some students haven't dropped out. I didn't drop out. I left school on my terms.
It scares me to death when I think about the students who don't finish high school.
When students drop out before receiving a high school diploma, their explanation is often quite simply put, I didn't like school. But it isn't that simple. A lot of kids who say they don't like school stick it out. Dropping out can't just be viewed as a single event or a simple decision. There's more going on, much more. And it's been going on for a long time. Often an array of factors conspire against a student's success over time. Here's the bottom line. According to Education Week, 1 in 4 high school students nationwide fails to graduate in 4 years. And each one of these lost students raises questions about the student, their schools and teachers, their family, and their community.
We either modify the child today, or we manage that same adult tomorrow.
Like many major metropolitan areas, St. Louis is anchored by a large urban school district. Like many large urban districts, St. Louis Public Schools' graduation rate falls below the national average. But the numbers have been improving steadily over the last few years, from about 55% in 2007 to more than 62% this year. And that's better than a lot of other big cities. The school district cites new programs and improved data collection. But the challenges are not just faced by the city of St. Louis. There are suburban school districts dealing with many of the same issues, especially those districts serving predominantly African American population. Nationwide, the graduation rate is 72%. In Missouri, it stands at 75%. But for African American and Hispanic students, only about 55% are graduating in 4 years, and that disparity is typical nationwide. Dropping out can put a young person in a hole they may never climb out of. The costs to them and the community are high and impact the rest of their lives. Dropouts are likely to earn less money. 1 in 4 dropouts ends up receiving some kind of public assistance. A high school dropout is 8 times as likely as a high school graduate to end up in prison. And the community overall ends up losing in this equation.
It's not enough to tell a person what the problem is and to show them that there is a problem. Now let's talk solutions. Here's some things that we can do to turn this around, and we're going to need your help.
I live in Washington, where we spend a lot of time laying blame. The arguments are no different when it comes to our children's education. It's the teenagers' fault, it's the family's fault, it's the school's fault. Someone else is always to blame. But when it comes to the dropout crisis, studies show we all share the blame, from the home to school to our communities. We have to look at them all. High dropout rates are more likely to be found in big cities and in poor rural areas. We have members of the student chapter of the National Association of Black Journalists tweeting live from our studio tonight. You can follow us on Twitter. More than 100 of the frontline troops in our schools from 20 districts across the St. Louis region, the classroom teachers, are joining us in our audience and on our panel tonight. Joining us is Barrett Taylor, who teaches African American literature at Metro High School, a blue ribbon school in the St. Louis public school system. He also teaches summer school and is the head soccer coach at Roosevelt High School, one of the most challenged schools in the St. Louis public school system. Stephanie Krause is the president and CEO of Shearwater Academy, a school designed to help students aged 17 to 21 earn their high school diplomas after their education has been interrupted. Dr. Celeste Adams teaches honors English at Riverview Gardens High School and is an Excellence in Education Award winner. Riverview lost its accreditation in 2007. Dr. Adams is also a part of a mentoring program for African American males. During this hour, we will talk about how teachers see all of this and how home and community can help them do their jobs. We're going to start by asking our panel, in your experience, why do teachers fail, Barrett Taylor, and what are we in the position to do about that?
I'm not going to place blame on any particular group, but I think it's a combination. I think the system, the curriculum, teachers, and parents fail students. I think that we need to change education today. Instead of having the students adapt to the education, we need to adapt to the students.
What does that mean, adapt to the students?
Well, I mean, when I went to high school, I got one education. When I came to the city, I saw something different. We need to work with these kids to help them learn.
And go to their homes, go to their communities?
We have to.
It's not just in school.
It's not just in school. You know, teachers have the kids for 6.5 hours a day. We need to go home and help these kids. We need to create systems to help these kids when they're at home. I can't tell you what it is like to live in an impoverished background. Some of the kids that I have met tell me stories that I cannot relate to. So when they come to school and I'm talking about Beowulf or things fall apart, they're not hearing that. They're thinking about what's going on in my home. How can I eat? You know, my mom, she might be strung out on drugs. You know, I have to go work and help my kids, you know, my brothers and sisters out. That's what I'm focused on. I think until we figure out how we can get those kids on par with the other kids from suburban districts or wealthier districts, we are in a we have a lot of problems coming at us.
Stephanie Krause, is that your experience as well?
I agree with Barrett. I think that understanding the context of the community is critical, really examining what are the issues that they've faced throughout their life. What are they going home to? Where are they arriving? I think in terms of identifying how it is that we're failing these students, we can go a little bit further as well. You know, Shearwater High School serves youth who were unable to succeed in a traditional school. They dropped out or became disconnected. And when we look at the experiences that they've had in school, and when we also look across the country for programs that train teachers like mine who work in non-traditional settings, for me it comes down to, in addition to what Barrett said, how are we providing really high quality training and accountability for our teachers?
So it sounds to me like your focus is on the teachers as much as the students?
Absolutely. I think that the data would tell us, and experience and stories would tell us, that you can take an extraordinary teacher who's deeply committed to getting to know the community where they serve and place them just about anywhere. And with the proper support and accountability and training, they can show great academic gains in their students and authentic relationships with those kids and their families.
Celeste Adams, does that ring a bell with you, or do you think there's a different approach?
Yes, I do, and I agree with both of my colleagues here. There are both extraneous and associating factors of why students fail. I'm primarily bringing the perspective of we have to look at our students differently now. Classical or traditional education is dead. It's failing our students. We have to look at our students as a community. With that meaning, the academic part are the legs of the student. That is the part where they can walk through the world, globally, within the community, locally. The heart is the family. The arms, that's the authority. And the head is the cultural mindset. And the school has to cater to the whole, not just the part.
You all are well aware that much of this discussion on a national level has been about whether teachers are up to the task. And it's kind of the elephant in the room. Whether teachers, not to blame, but whether they are essential to this. And we heard Stephanie say yes. Do you agree with that, Barrett?
I agree. I think teachers play an integral part in the education of kids, but I think teachers get a bad rap in the news. The teachers that I work with at Metro High School and at Roosevelt High School work hard every day to educate these kids. I think the parents have to educate their kids. You know, what we do at school is wonderful, but when they go back home, what is going on? What is going on? Are the parents reading to their kids? Are they talking to their kids, asking simple questions? What did you learn today? How was school? You know, every day when I came home, my dad would tell me, he would say, as soon as I walk in, what did you learn?
But that's a nice idea, and that's the way it was for me too, but that's not the way it is for so many students now, so especially so many who their only time they walk into a organized environment is in school. So how do you make school fill those gaps? Let me start with you, Celeste, and then Stephanie.
Well, once we come into the knowledge that there is a shift that needs to be placed, for example, in my school district, Riverview Gardens, they have embraced a mentoring program called Gentlemen of Vision Rites of Passage. They see that the academic component is not the end-all, be-all success of the student, and they take components of mentoring, manhood, cultural development, psychological and social concerns, and they have embraced this program to ensure the success of the student. For the last 2 years, we have a 100% graduation rate and college admission rate, and that's something to be said. School districts now have to look outside of the box now.
Stephanie?
We know the power of a caring adult. We've heard it for years because it works. And I look across the room at my brilliant staff who get up and work every day. And Gwen, you said it, there are students who the luxury of having an intact family is one they'll never be afforded. I'm a new mom with an 11-month-old baby who's waiting for me to get home, and he's got his wrapped up Goodnight Moon book, and the rest of the book's already at 11 months. And I can't speak to that for the youth that we serve on a daily basis. What I can speak to is how we create community at Shearwater, because I think we do a real good job of it. And at first it comes from an honest love. You know, one of the things we talk about at Shearwater is that the best way to confront ugliness is through authentic joy. Strengths-based, really looking at what are the assets that you already bring, that you already have. And then giving space for peer groups and accountability and conversations. My kids come from all over this community, which has 300 formal and informal gangs, and yet violence is not seen there in the ways that it is in the larger high schools, and they support each other and they get up under each other. There's common purpose and also a true sharing of where it is that they come from and what it is that they've survived.
Great way to start off this conversation, because now we're going to turn it to all of you. We want to hear from as many of you as we can tonight, and we'll get to audience questions in just a moment. But everyone in the audience can join us using your cell phones for a text poll. Let us know what you think. First question: does your school effectively address students who lack reading skills or are performing below grade level? Text us now, and we'll have the results in a moment. But first, we're going to go to this story about a school where learning and discipline go hand in hand.
Everybody sit down. Hey guys, sit down for a second. Everybody sit down for me. Everybody, please.
It's the school of last resort. Some students here have been expelled, committed crimes, even served time in juvenile detention. And many of them were sentenced in Jimmy Edwards' courtroom.
How long I lock you up for? I never lock you up. I lock you up for 2 years. Most of the kids that I have here, I have a personal relationship with them. And so my interest is making sure that they survive, that they achieve. I want you untied in uniform.
In partnership with Mars Goodwill and the St. Louis Public Schools, Judge Jimmy Edwards started the Innovative Concept Academy in 2009 in an empty school building in the same North St. Louis neighborhood he grew up in.
These are very, very bright kids, and I like them a lot.
He knew that these kids, if not given another chance in a disciplined, structured environment where they could finish high school, would probably end up in somebody else's courtroom.
It's easy to turn your back. It's easy to lock them up. What's more difficult for you and I to do with a poor child is to say, you can succeed, and you are as bright as any other child. I just want to bring you in here, and we were talking about our community partners.
Judge Edwards has gotten a lot of attention. He was just named People Magazine's Hero Among Us, and this school is supported by more than 40 sponsors. Corporate donations bought top-notch kitchen and laundry facilities because for many students, it's a home away from home. Exercise equipment was donated by the YMCA. But this is not about coddling. It's about educating kids who often lack proficient reading and critical thinking skills.
If you have a child who is in the 12th grade, who's 18 years old, who reads on a 3rd grade level, I believe you have to give that child a 3rd grade textbook and start to teach that child from a 3rd grade level.
It's also about keeping them supervised and keeping them busy after school. The security is tight, the rules are enforced.
I mean, I'm tough, and sometimes they don't like it, but I am. And they won't understand it for a while. If, firstly, there is a lack of adult supervision, secondly, too much idle time, and thirdly, economic constraints. If those 3 pathways exist, a child is going to end up in the criminal justice system. Now, if we can eradicate 2 of those pathways, then the child stands a better chance of succeeding.
And now we have the reaction to the question that we just heard. The first question, our first text poll, which is very exciting. The question was, does your school effectively address students who lack reading skills or are performing below grade level? 15% of you said no, your school doesn't effectively address them. 19% of you said yes, but 44% said only some of the time, and 23% said most of the time. That's an interesting and kind of depressing number, some of the time instead of most of the time. We wanted to hear most of the time, but we're gonna find out a little bit more why. You just heard from Judge Jimmy Edwards, who's taken some of this within his own hands, and he's in our audience with us tonight. And I want you to expound a little bit about what you were just talking about in our little tape piece, which is, you know, what is the biggest challenge you found in trying to take on this tough a situation? You're dealing with hardened young people who have already made decisions for themselves to walk away from their education.
I think the major problem that I see every single day is negative socialization. These children are coming from homes where nobody understands what is positive. No one's educated. So we have a cycle of ignorance. 1, 2, 3, 4 generations where people don't have the ability to read. And that was one of the foundations that we have at the Innovative Concept Academy. Churchill Center and School is a wonderful school in West St. Louis County who partnered with the Innovative Concept Academy to do one thing, and that was to teach reading. Basic reading. What is a noun? What is a vowel? To 17 and 18-year-old children. And we've had some success because the children are no longer embarrassed by the fact that they can't read. Children want to learn. They want structure. Children come to school for various reasons, and teachers have to find out what those reasons are.
I want to follow up with that because you said negative socialization on the part, and we're opening the floor to questions from our audience as well, you know where the microphones are. You talked about negative socialization on the part of the students. What about on the part of adults who expect so little of these students and say, oh, well, they're done?
Well, I think that's part of the negative socialization. And that socialization, unfortunately, is coming from their community, including those psychological parents that they're dealing with. I see teachers, unfortunately, that perceive these children in the same way. If a child is in the back of the classroom or gazing at a wall or looking at the ceiling, and as long as that child is quiet, the teacher is content. Never ask the question, why? And if you ask that question, you will learn that that child is worried about where he or she is going to sleep the next night. or they come to school because they have the responsibility for their young siblings, and the best part of school is at the end of the lunch period where they can put chicken fingers in their pockets so that they can take them home to their siblings. See, we have to understand why they come to school, because they don't all come to learn. They come for a reason. They're cold, maybe it's too hot, it's safe, they're hungry, and you take the opportunity then to teach them. And so we have the responsibility as teachers to explore why, firstly, they're there, and secondly, how do I help this child achieve success?
So the goal may be to come to school, but not necessarily to graduate in the first place.
Well, the goal is to come to school for a different reason. You must take the opportunity while they're there to ensure that they graduate.
Stephanie, what do you think of that?
I can speak to our experience at Shearwater High School, and we have some students who transition from Judge Edwards School. All of our students have a professed desire to return to school. So what we're seeing in the local community, and I can speak to that, is today we have a roster of about 60 students and 93 on our waiting list, and it was just 80 a week and a half ago. So there are a huge group of young people who left school for a time, and that's where the judge and I see the same students, had incredible life situations, families perhaps that we don't choose our families. So situations that were difficult, neighborhoods that are difficult. And what we're finding, what we see at Shearwater, is that there is a large contingent of youth who want to come back to school, who are making a professed desire to want to graduate and get their diploma and go on to college. And what we're lacking is a variety of high quality options that can take them. I want this community to take my 92 students off the waiting list and put them in high quality educational options.
Let's hear from our audience.
Well, I would just like to know, back in the 60s, I can remember reading a book called Summerhill. And it was about a school, and I believe it was in England, but I'm not positive, residential school, that students came to school, but if they didn't want to learn math that day, they went out and worked in the garden. They were productive some way that day. They couldn't stay in bed.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You're a teacher.
Yes.
Is that something you would like to have, that kind of flexibility?
I would love to have a school like that, personally, where if a child comes to school and I'm an elementary teacher, if he or she doesn't like to come to school, let him go down to the cafeteria and work in the cafeteria. Let him go to the library and shelf books. Let them do whatever they think they can be productive at that particular day. Now, it would create a lot of, we have podcasts now, we have videos, we have all sorts of different things going on. So if that student decides, oh, I want to learn my math facts now, or I want to learn to read, maybe they could, but it would have to be, I'm not sure how it would work, but I just would love it if a student doesn't want to learn that particular day what is on the schedule, let them go do something productive and be successful in that way.
Celeste, is that realistic to you?
Well, I know in the Asian cultures that if students do not perform well in school, then they have an alternative way of being productive in society. Unfortunately, it's the grueling work in the rice fields. I'm not saying that that is an answer, and I can understand what she is saying to give them some sort of alternative. However, it would have to be structured. It would have to have a focus in order for that to work, to give them some sort of alternative for that day to bring the child back.
Jim, do you have another question?
Yeah. My name is Janine Moloff. I'm a speech language pathologist in the St. Louis City Schools by choice for over 25 years. Concerning what they said about children coming from impoverished backgrounds, it was a noted psychologist, Maslow, who spoke of a hierarchy of needs. And before a person can become self-actualized, so they love learning, for instance, for the pure love of learning, they have to have basic needs met, whether it's food, a place to live, health care, and so on. The fact is, we haven't had an honest discussion about the ravages of poverty and how it affects our children. We have not had a discussion about how corporations avoid paying their taxes but give donations, and how it tears at the base, which is how schools are put together. We haven't had a discussion about how curriculum needs to be made relevant, especially to children from impoverished districts. Instead, we get watered-down curriculums of intellectual pablum. We have to be honest. Teenagers especially can spot hypocrisy a mile wide. We have an Occupy movement going on right now, and these are kids that may or may not have passed their Constitution test and know how many stars are on the flag or whatever. But they understand the theft of the Bill of Rights by George Bush's administration, the continuation of that theft by this administration.
Well, okay.
We need to have an honest discussion about
I understand where you're going, and I understand that you have a political point that you want to make, but I'm trying to keep this as much on the things we can do to fix it rather than indictments of previous administrations.
If you want children to be able to learn, then you need to actually deal real with these kids and be honest about it.
That's fine. Let's let someone respond.
I'm not going to talk about politics, but I do think you're right about that real conversation. I don't think we want to talk about poverty. We don't want to talk about race. Those are huge things in America today that are affecting our kids. Until we talk about those things and how those factors affect those kids from impoverished backgrounds, we're not going to change. It's easy to sit up here and talk about it, but we have to talk, we have to do something. Because I see kids on a daily basis who don't have anything. But then I go out to other districts and have everything. How can kids achieve when they don't have computers? When they don't have pencils, they don't have paper? You go out to these, county districts, they have everything. We don't have apples and apples. We really need to make a change. I think you're right on the.
But when teachers say that we don't talk about politics,
we have somebody else who has a question.
I'm Pat McHugh, a retired inner city St. Louis teacher, 21 and a half years teaching high school English, and I have 2 points. And that is, the first one is we need to teach concentrated phonics in first grade. Many children will learn without it, but you can have brilliant kids who never quite unlock the code. If you taught concentrated phonics to everyone in first grade, they're dying to read. They would stand on their heads. But the problem is they don't drop out in high school. They drop out in second grade, and they hang around for 8 years. Now, my second point is these schools need a community approach, which some of you have been talking about. When I had kids that were coming that had no food in the house, grandma is raising them, and grandma dies. They're on the street. They go home at night in the dark. They come in the dark so they won't be shot. They have medical problems. They have mental problems. We need to address the problems of the family. They need heat in the house. They need food. They need medical care. And these community programs, in some places, they have ways to help the family get jobs, train them, and let's teach the parents how to read too.
We're going to talk a little bit in a few moments about the community responsibilities. We really want to get to that, but I would like to ask you whether you think the responsibility is a government one or whether that has been usurped now by, I don't know, community partnerships or others, that the government no longer has a role in this.
No small organization can address these problems completely. We need government, but we need government that has people that are enforcing the rules, that aren't just writing them somewhere in some distant place and not giving us the means. I would like to have the means to do the job that I know I can do.
I'd like to ask our panel up here, thank you, about a point she made, which is that, and everybody kind of went, when she said it, which is people drop out, or people stop learning early and they just drop out formally later. This is something which starts early, and we only recognize it when the high school graduation rates, or lack thereof, are tallied. Is that something which is being paid not enough attention to, the idea that failure happens that early?
We're having an honest conversation, right?
Yeah.
First, I want to pay tribute to the tremendous intellectual heft, obviously, and years of service in this room, which I'm inspired by. I want to just quickly divert from being a teacher and talk about being a dropout. I'm a high school dropout, but I left after 8th grade. And I left after my brother dropped out. And I was exposed to great schools, tremendous. And I love the plug for phonics because I cannot tell you how many facts I do not know with an 8th grade education. But 2 master's degrees later, and as a school leader, I can read. And the power behind being able to read is great. But around the 2nd grade issue, I grew up in a neighborhood that assumed that I would drop out of school. And I was smart and athletic and had grandiose visions that little kids have. And there was a pervasive sense in my community that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I worked, I was going to drop out. I'd probably be an alcoholic. I'd keep working at the town pizzeria, and that was it for me. And so in spite of some really excellent teachers in the 8th grade, that's exactly what I did. Around the question that, or the comment with productive living, alternatives to learning, I think the community would have chosen for me to go to the garden, not to the books. And I needed guidance to be able to learn how to read and to pursue academics. So to speak honestly and candidly for a moment, I always dreamed of Harvard, and my community created and casted a vision far different than that. And without incredible intervention and some real miraculous circumstances, I would still be a dropout kid working at a local pizzeria in New Jersey.
Celeste, you're nodding.
Yes, I can identify with that. As society will put it, statistically, I was not supposed to achieve academically where I am today. I was a victim of, like some of my girls and boys in my classroom, of sexual assault. 2 of my sisters were killed tragically. 1 here in St. Louis was murdered. I have been through a lot, and I can say that it was the invested teachers. It wasn't necessarily the community at that point, but it was the invested teachers who saw something in me to help me become who I am today. So I think the core of that is we have to ask ourselves as educators, what am I in this for? Teaching is like a marriage. We have good days when we drive home and we're singing songs, and we have our bad days and say, why am I in this? At least I did when I was married.
We have time for another question from the audience.
Well, I think you guys all spoke to at one point about commitment and relationships. And I know you just spoke to about the teachers that came to you and said, you have something to give. And I think a lot of our middle school kids, students, need that on a daily basis, not just by one of us, not just by 2 of us, but by everybody that they encounter as soon as they walk in that door. That is a very hard couple years for them, that middle school transitional years where they start to get out of the child part into the teenagers to more responsibility. And it's very empowering when you don't necessarily go to your duty time when you're supposed to, and your kids are looking around for you, and they're like, oh no, we have a sub. Well, last year it was like, yeah, we have a sub. So this year, getting a big hug from one of my students and saying, I'm glad we don't have a sub today, was empowering for me as well as for her.
That's wonderful. We're now going to go to another text question. I know you all can't wait for this. Have your cell phones at the ready. This question is, in your own experience as a teacher, would you say that the level of community support and involvement in your school is high, medium, or low? We'll text that question to our studio audience and talk about the results after this story about some local community efforts making a difference.
Hey, Ms. Granger. Hey. What we got going on here?
In the offices of the St. Louis Public School District is a room full of supplies, and not just school supplies, but school uniforms, socks, underwear, even laundry detergent and sleeping bags, because some students are homeless. Almost all of this is donated.
And not be comfortable.
Our community partners are fabulous. They're absolutely fabulous.
Walbridge School in North St. Louis serves one of the city's most impoverished and dangerous neighborhoods.
Okay, let's go. We're on the intercom.
Community support and volunteers are essential elements of the efforts to improve attendance, discipline, and academics at this school.
Where our partners come in and do tutorials. Our partners come in and provide field trips.
Poor kids are at greater risk of dropping out even if they are making good grades. One way to fight negative out-of-school factors is with positive out-of-school factors.
Oh, it is big, and they do know that other people do care about them.
Hey, I'm so glad to see you all out tonight on this cold, rainy evening.
Lottie Wade is with the Spanish Lake Community Association. The unincorporated North County suburb has its share of low-income and single-parent families.
It's critical that communities connect with schools and actually start thinking about them as our schools, not those buildings that are apart from the community.
This meeting at Hazelwood East Middle School was an open invitation to residents to come in and sign up as volunteers for mentoring programs. But the weather didn't cooperate, and most seats were empty, except for the representatives of various organizations. Wade was disappointed but not discouraged. She will continue to get her message out.
You know, when you drive through the community and you see children on the street, or you read the paper and you hear about failing grades, do you often say, somebody needs to do something about this? And we say, what if that somebody is you?
Now we have a response to that question we posed just before we went to that tape. The question was, in your own experience as a teacher, would you say that the level of community support and involvement in your school is high, medium, or low? 21% of you said high, 24% said medium, 55% said low. Ouch. I want to let me talk to you about that. Could you respond to that? Is that a sense, was that your sense, that there's not enough community engagement in our schools?
Well, I think there isn't. It's difficult to get people involved who don't love education, and everybody doesn't. But certainly in this room, we have teachers who love education, or they wouldn't be teachers. And certainly we can influence both the kids and the community if we're given that opportunity. And in this country today, what we're focusing on instead is, can you answer a multiple choice test instead of how do we make you love education? How do we get you to feel that this is something that is meaningful to you? And if we don't do that, the rest of this is a waste of time.
Is that a question that it speaks to teachers and their preparation? Or are you talking about the students answering the multiple?
The students,
testing of students.
You know, Judge Edwards made an important statement. He said, the kids are bright. The kids are bright. And they don't want to answer meaningless multiple choice questions to make somebody in Washington, D.C. or someone in Jefferson City feel good.
You have another question here, or a statement, if you like.
And listening to everyone's perceptions of our current situation, I've been an educator for 14 years now, and at the end of the day, after we have these effective conversations, after we all leave today, I think that someone mentioned about us each having a commitment to education. We can't change Washington overnight. We can't change the bureaucracy overnight. But what we can do is go back to our schools, invest in our students, find a student who needs additional support. I know at our school, Lewis and Clark and Riverview Garden School District, our principal started a intervention program where every single day our teachers take time to review, go over, create, master lessons that address the basic skills of students. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is we can't change this overnight, but at the same time, we can start somewhere. So I guess I don't want us to get so overwhelmed with Washington and the many issues that we do face. but realize that at the end of the day, we can go back and start somewhere.
Well, let me ask you a question on that, because you say we. We just saw that piece about partnership where there were all those empty chairs that night in that school. Do you feel like there's a we out there with you?
I do think there's a we. In that clip that we just saw, because of inclement weather or whatever it was, they had multiple people who did not show. But some did show. Some are committed. There are some who are willing to get out there and do what it takes for our students to be successful. So I guess I'm just at the point of, I cannot change the system overnight, but I can go to work tomorrow, get involved in the intervention program. If somebody needs some uniforms, get them uniforms. If somebody needs a sleeping bag, get them a sleeping bag. I can only do my part.
And that's all anybody's probably asking. Sir, I don't know, is it?
Okay, thank you. I think we have to be smarter than our students. I think our students are screaming at us, listen to us, okay? We can't learn when we just saw our brother get murdered last night. Our country trains volunteers to go to Afghanistan and Iraq. They come back after seeing horrifically violent things, and the suicide rate amongst these guys who are grown adults is astronomically high. And yet, some of our students go through these same things. They come into the classroom and they're supposed to remember that Columbus sailed in 1492.
Are you saying that there's not enough mental health concerns, there's not behavioral concerns? Because we're trying to really talk about...
I think it's interesting that we've asked, the questions have been about reading and community, and what the teachers keep telling everybody is it's about the students not being emotionally prepared in the classroom to be able to learn. I was trained as a, thank you. I was trained as a technician, okay? I was trained that these 25 kids are gonna come in and are all gonna be ready to learn, and I'm supposed to teach. This is the best way to teach somebody who wants to learn math or reading. Some of you teach in places where half of your students, I mean, saliency is not the board. Saliency is thinking about what happened to me last night, or my mom didn't come home last night.
So you're saying the old ways don't work anymore. Stephanie?
So I want to address two things. Sir, to your point, our students have to be able to learn when someone gets shot the night before. And I'd invite you to my school to see the unbelievable situations that my students show up in spite of. The rates of violence, the rates of dysfunction and brokenness in the communities where these kids live are so elevated that we have no other option as we're working for systemic change than to figure out working strategies that reach them there and keep them engaged in a stable and firm and consistent loving place. Now to the community piece. I left the classroom to get a degree in social work. You don't have to talk to me about socio-emotional health. I left teaching because Delisa's house burned down and because Ryan's mom couldn't work less than 3 jobs and Mario's dad got deported. And I showed up at social work and ended up back on the end of education. It is, as a school leader, the role of your school leaders to figure out where the community can get engaged, because I didn't know what I know now when Delisa's house burned down, which was what agencies I could access who would show up to help her. And I didn't know when Mario's dad got deported the free legal advice that he had. So what I would tell you in terms of impact is I remember the thousands of dollars that I spent, thousands and thousands of dollars that I spent for my kids. Go pressure your school leaders to get out in the community, because I see friends in the audience who are community leaders who are so willing to assist and have the resources to show up. We partner formally with 10 different agencies. My Dean of Culture is back there, and she's got an unbelievable network where our kids get childcare and housing and food and clothing and all of the things that they need so that they can show up no matter the odds and still have the chance to actually be able to learn.
Yes.
There's a lot to talk about, but I think I'm going to focus on 2 things right now. I'm a special education teacher. I have a self-contained classroom, and I know that is on the way out in the country, but I look at it as a big boon. I have some of my children for 3 and 4 years. To me, they're my kids, and they know that. Anything they need, they can come out. The biggest thing that I have learned with them is, we were talking about, I don't feel like doing such and such a thing today. They know what they're expected to do by the end of the week. I don't care what order they do it in. You feel like doing all math today? Go right ahead. As long as what I'm asking of you is done by the end of the week. It's a very structured program. They know the rules, they know the consequences, and they all rise up to them. I don't say I never have an issue. I have issues, but we deal with them right away. And the kids know what they want to do. At this point, attendance is excellent. My parents, I have had every excuse. You know my kid was a preemie. You know my kid is autistic. Doesn't matter. My relationship with the parents is there. But I tell the kids, it's you and I. You know what I'm expecting, you rise to the occasion. And I'm even blunt enough to say, natural order of things, your parents will not be alive to look at you when you are grown up. Take responsibility. And most of them rise up to it.
Thank you.
My name is Marjorie Stringer, and I work for the special school district, and I'm stationed at Washington Elementary, and I wanted to piggyback off the last couple comments. The thing I've heard the most is that we separate ourselves as the school and the community when the school and the community are one, and that's what we need to get back to anyway, because if the kids feel like they have a home to go to at school, then yeah, they'll be excited to come to school, and that's what I'm sorry, Stephanie was saying just a few minutes ago. Her kids, although their situations are bad, they still want to come to school and learn because there's someone there that cares. And as educators, we need to get back to that point where we're not just hands off, but we're more hands on. These kids' education needs to become personal to us and not just a separation from ourselves.
Barrett.
One thing I hear everyone keeps on talking about this thing about the kids and how the families need to change. To me, this is the big elephant in the room. We need to teach sex education in the schools because a lot of the kids that I deal with, that I've seen, are 15, 16 years old that have kids. Babies cannot raise babies to be successful in schools. Until we have that conversation, things are not going to change. When I came in the district, I met this kid who was 17 years old. I was 24 years old. He had 3 kids, 17 and 3 kids. If we had told him at 14 years old, well, you know what? If you have 1 kid at this age, it's going to hurt you it's going to stop you from going to school. He might have said, well, this might not be the thing for me. We need to educate these kids. That's part of education. Until we do those things, the education is not going to change. Babies cannot raise babies.
Yes.
I used to teach at Blewett before the judge came there, and they thought the kids couldn't do well in science, but with resources, I think we haven't talked enough about that. Yeah. I had resources from like the Danforth Foundation, and I was able to raise those scores. They had some of the highest increases in scores across the state for African American kids. And then I did it again in another district, but I had resources. So I think we need to talk about, you were talking about the community. That helps. And then also just having efficacy. What do you believe? If you go into that classroom believing that kids can learn no matter what, and then you just do whatever it takes, it can happen. But the problem too is that we need to have some respect for things like science. It comes down from the top, even maybe from Washington, that math and reading is the only thing that's important, but historically, countries that lead in science and technology are the countries that lead.
Can I ask you a little bit more about resources? Because it seems that when we talk about resources, we talk about nonprofits, we talk about business, which is assuming that we're making the case that this is your future workforce. Is that where you go first now for resources, or in the case like Stephanie, reaching in her own pocket?
Well, I think we're going to have to be innovative, and we're going to have to reach out to, because those were private entities that were helping me.
Right.
So, and they were giving me technology. They were, letting me travel across the country to see other schools. and go to space camp, anything that and then, you know, just opened my mind. I started studying, you know, what are they doing in Netherlands? Why are they kicking our butts in science? What are they doing in China? And then I started to teach, you know, like they did, and I just saw these tremendous increases. But the question is that respected? And I have to say that it's not right now. And if we don't respect that, we're gonna lose our edge in science and technology. We have to do both, because I combined a lot of critical thinking and a lot of literacy. And then we have to also think about, like that book, The World is Flat. Don't disrespect me just because I have the title of teacher. I may know more and I can get more done. You know, just respect that. Look at the data.
We have time for another question from the audience, and then we're gonna wrap up.
Well, I just kind of wanted to make a statement about resources, and I had opportunity to go abroad and teach in the UK, and you talk about the classrooms and what things are already there and in place, like notebooks are there, pencils are there, smart boards, if you want to say smart boards are there, computers are there, the access is in every single classroom, and this was not, I mean, it was an impoverished community outside of London, outer borough, but the resources were there. And I have to say, like, I started off as a New York City teacher, and I remember coming out of my pocket for so many things that I wanted to have in my classroom that I felt like my kids needed. And you still see those same stories. You come out of pocket and the resources are not there. The technology to keep our kids engaged, to keep them abreast of, you know, what's happening in the future, we don't have. There's a, like you said before, you spoke about, there's a difference in one school, what one school or one school district will have and what another one will have. And I think that when you talk about the kids that I work with, that we need to have that technology there. That will help them be engaged, you know, and have the recess forum, because they will not be successful to be able to compete with other countries as has happened.
Well, let's talk about, as we wrap up tonight, I want to turn back to our folks on the stage and talk about that, resources and what success, because in the end, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about how do we create an environment for success, and defining success is actually getting a high school diploma. So as you've listened to the things we've talked about, obviously there's a lot of hope, but there's also a lot of pain in this room as people try to grapple with the problems and the challenges. Starting with you, Celeste, what is the key takeaway? What is the forward-thinking action that schools, teachers, school systems, even the community ought to be taking?
I think the takeaway from all of this is we have to start with the mother, okay? The mother is the first teacher of the child. There's a research that I've looked at recently. You can find it on the ERIC database, and it's called Teach a Mother, Reach a Child. School districts now have to educate the community, the mother, because the higher educational level or the success of the child depends upon the educational level of the mother. So if we can educate the family, we will have more success with the child.
Stephanie.
The issues are hard. They've been hard for a long time, and they're not getting easier. I was encouraged by the last set of comments. I think as a sector, we have to know where our agency is. As a social worker and a teacher, I can say that there are some brilliant social service leaders in this community and active folks who are waiting to be asked. We're big believers at Shearwater about know who you know, know who you know what you know and don't know, and know the experts who do. It is around getting as trained as we can in the profession we've selected and being the very best teacher, and then finding the very best social worker and the very best lawyer to partner.
Are you optimistic about that? I mean, it sounds fabulous.
I am. There is a donor of Shearwater that shares that St. Louis is a community that is big enough to matter and small enough to change. I survey this audience, and I see donors and nonprofit leaders and unbelievable frontline workers who showed up, like me with my baby who's waiting to get fed, with all kinds of things that are waiting, and they're going to wake up early. If rightly mobilized, St. Louis can do this. And there is the intellectual heft, the capacity to collaborate, and surely the passion and expertise that maybe as a small city we could actually come around something and instead of talking about the issues, continue honing in on where we're expert.
Barrett, you get the final word.
Final word.
Better be good.
Well, I'm going to go back to what she said. I think we need to have real and relevant conversations about education today. We need to talk about poverty and we need to talk about race. Until we talk about those things, things won't change. This education system will continue to perpetuate the problem. Until we stop the inequalities amongst the rich and the poor, we're not going to do anything.
But you're suggesting that we talk more.
Action. I want action.
Action in what sense, though? But talking about poverty and talking about race, we can toss numbers back and forth all night. But then what?
Well, you know, for example, I teach summer school every summer at Roosevelt High School. I don't have to. I don't get paid that much. I do it because I want to help kids learn. I want to reach young black males who need black role models in their lives. People, that's what we need to do. We need to have people who don't have to go and do it. You know, this is a great forum to talk, but after we leave this, are we going to go in North St. Louis and help these kids out?
Okay. Thank you all very much, and thank you all very much. We've done our job. I want to thank all of our panelists and all we've heard tonight, but that's just the next step, not just for educators, but for all of us. We really want to make sure that we do everything that we can do to make sure that young people aren't dropping out of school, and there are ways to keep them in. And that's why this project is called American Graduate, Let's Make It Happen. From the PBS NewsHour and Washington Week, I'm Gwen Ifill. Good night.
American Graduate Teacher Town Halls are funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and are part of American Graduate Let's Make It Happen, a public media initiative made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.